At least 3 killed in Oklahoma tornado outbreak, as threat of severe storms continues from Missouri to Texas. Shame on you, pro-Palestine protest at White House Correspondents' dinner. CNN poll, Trump maintains lead over Biden in 2024 matchup as views on their presidencies diverge. College protesters want amnesty. At stake, tuition, legal charges, grades and graduation. At least 3 people are dead, including an infant, after a tornado outbreak in Oklahoma overnight, as severe storms threaten more twisters, heavy rain and large hail from Missouri to Texas Sunday. Multiple large and extremely dangerous tornadoes were reported on the ground simultaneously overnight across parts of Oklahoma, according to the National Weather Service. 2 deaths occurred in Holdenville, and the third near Marietta on I-35, according to Kelly Kane, Public Affairs Director for the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt issued an emergency disaster declaration and will be touring storm damage in the Murray County town of Sulphur and Holdenville, he shared in a video message. There were reports of injuries, property damage, flooding and downed power lines and trees across several counties Saturday night, the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management said. The extent of the damage was unclear early Sunday. Sulphur, about 80 miles south of Oklahoma City, saw injuries and impacts from what appears to be at least 2 large tornadoes overnight as a flood warning was issued for the city, according to the Weather Service. A large and extremely dangerous tornado was located south of Sulphur, moving north at 35 miles per hour. First responders need to prepare for additional tornado impacts immediately, the Weather Service in Norman warned. Nearly 47 million people are at risk for severe weather Sunday from East Texas northward into the upper Mississippi River Valley as communities in Nebraska and Iowa survey the destruction the storms have already left behind. Cities including Dallas and Austin in Texas, Oklahoma City and Tulsa in Oklahoma, Wichita and Topeka in Kansas and the Kansas City metropolitan area could see strong tornadoes as storms push eastward across the southern plains. More than 7 million people are under tornado watches early Sunday, stretching more than 800 miles from Texas to southern Wisconsin. The watch areas are due to expire between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. Central Time. The Weather Service reported 2 tornadoes crossing Oklahoma's Highway 9 between Goldsby and Blanchard at the same time late Saturday, as well as a sighting just east of Tinker Air Force Base. And as a tornado headed towards Norman, the University of Oklahoma warned students and staff to seek shelter now inside the building you are in. Move to lowest floor/interior room. Oklahoma's Emergency Operations Center was activated Saturday, according to a Facebook post from Governor Kevin Stitt. Stay weather aware and know where you'll take shelter if a severe storm threatens your area, he told residents. Shame on you, pro-Palestine protest at White House Correspondents' dinner. The U.S. president offers a toast to press freedom and democracy around the world but fails to mention the killings of many Palestinian journalists since October. Condemning President Joe Biden for his support of the military campaign and under-coverage of the conflict by Western news outlets. However, Biden, who attended Saturday's event in Washington, D.C. and delivered a 10-minute speech, made no mention of the war in Gaza or the grave humanitarian crisis there. Protests at the gala event, which is normally devoted to presidents, journalists and comedians taking outrageous pokes at political scandals in each other, took place as anti-war demonstrations also spread through U.S. college campuses, with students pitching encampments and withstanding police sweeps in an effort to force their universities to divest from companies enabling Israel's military campaign on Gaza. The protests in the U.S. Capitol forced Biden's motorcade to take an alternate route from the White House to the Washington Hilton, where more than 100 protesters, some of them waving Palestinian flags, shouted "Shame on you" at guests hurrying inside. At one point, the crowds chanted, "Western media, we see you, and all the horrors that you hide," while some protesters sprawled motionless on the pavement, next to mock-ups of bloodied flak vests with press insignia. The crowds also cheered when someone inside the Washington Hilton, where the dinner has been held for decades, unfurled a Palestinian flag from a top-floor hotel window. CNN poll, Trump maintains lead over Biden in 2024 matchup as views on their presidencies diverge. Reuters/Getty Images. CNN. Donald Trump continues to hold an advantage over President Joe Biden as the campaign and the former president's criminal trial move forward, according to a new CNN poll conducted by SSRS. And in the coming rematch, opinions about the first term of each man vying for a second 4 years in the White House now appear to work in Trump's favor, with most Americans saying that, looking back, Trump's term as president was a success, while a broad majority says Biden's has so far been a failure. Trump's support in the poll among registered voters holds steady at 49% in a head-to-head matchup against Biden, the same as in CNN's last national poll on the race in January, while Biden stands at 43%, not significantly different from January's 45%. Looking back, 55% of all Americans now say they see Trump's presidency as a success, while 44% see it as a failure. In a January 2021 poll taken just before Trump left office and days after the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, 55% considered his time as president a failure. Assessing Biden's time in office so far, 61% say his presidency thus far has been a failure, while 39% say it's been a success. That's narrowly worse than the 57% who called the first year of his administration a failure in January 2022, with 41% calling it a success. Republicans now are more unified around the idea that Trump's presidency was a success than Democrats are that Biden's has been one. Overall, 92% of Republicans call Trump's time in office a success, while just 73% of Democrats say Biden's has been a success so far. Among independents, 51% say Trump's presidency was successful, while only 37% see Biden's as a success. There is some overlap in views of the two most recent presidents' achievements, with 14% of Americans saying they consider both are failures, while 8% say both are successes. About half of registered voters, 47%, consider Biden's presidency thus far to be a failure while saying Trump's was a success, while only 30% say Biden's has been successful and that Trump's was not. Public opinion of former presidents generally rises in retrospect, although no other modern president has attempted a similar return to power after an electoral loss. Negative views of Biden's work in office have held for much of his presidency. In the new poll, 60% disapprove of his handling of the job and 40% approve, about the same as it's been in CNN polling for more than a year. Even Biden's strongest issue approval ratings in the poll are also in negative territory, with 45% approving of his handling of health care policy and 44% approving his handling of student loan debt. And his worst issue approval rating, for his handling of the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, yields 28% approval to 71% disapproval, including an 81% disapproval mark among those younger than 35 and majority disapproval among Democrats, 53%. The economy. Biden's approval ratings for the economy, 34%, and inflation, 29%, remain starkly negative, as voters say economic concerns are more important to them when choosing a candidate than they were in each of the past two presidential contests. In the new poll, 65% of registered voters call the economy extremely important to their vote for president, compared with 40% who felt that way in early 2020 and 46% who said the same at roughly this point in 2016. Those voters who say the economy is deeply important break heavily for Trump in a matchup against Biden, 62% to 30%. College protesters want amnesty. At stake, tuition, legal charges, grades, and graduation. Miriam Alwyn figured the worst was over after New York City police in riot gear arrested her and other protesters on the Columbia University campus, loaded them onto buses and held them in custody for hours. But the next evening, the college junior received an email from the university. Alwyn and other students were being suspended after their arrests at the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, a tactic colleges across the country have deployed to calm growing campus protests against the Israel-Hamas war. The students' plight has become a central part of protests, with students and a growing number of faculty demanding their amnesty. At issue is whether universities and law enforcement will clear the charges and withhold other consequences, or whether the suspensions and legal records will follow students into their adult lives. Terms of the suspensions vary from campus to campus. At Columbia and its affiliated Barnard College for Women, Alwyn and dozens more were arrested April 18 and promptly barred from campus and classes, unable to attend in person or virtually, and banned from dining halls. Questions about their academic futures remain. Will they be allowed to take final exams? What about financial aid? Graduation? Columbia says outcomes will be decided at disciplinary hearings, but Alwyn says she has not been given a date. This feels very dystopian, said Alwyn, a comparative literature and society major.